Welcome to Heroes and Droids, your guide to movies and TV shows about superheroes, sci-fi, Disney, and action. From Marvel to DC, from Star Wars to Star Trek, from James Bond to the Fast and Furious. We'll discuss theatrical films and streaming delights you care about most. Tonight, we have a pair of reviews for you. We are reviewing The Bad Batch Season 2, Episode 3, and the debut of The Last of Us on HBOMax, Episode 1, which is movie length. Mm-hmm. All right, I am your host, Doc Rotten, and joining me tonight is the SLATTMAN, Christopher Slattery. How you doing, sir?
Pretty good.
Pretty,
How about you?
There's a song in there somewhere.
I know, right?
All right. Also joining us is award-winning filmmaker, Christopher G. Moore. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. I'm just living in this post-apocalyptic world, hating on fungi. Just over here.
Oh, you're not a fun guy.
No shrooms for you, sir. No shrooms for you. All right. Well, we do have a pair of reviews, and we hope you enjoy them. And if you do, please hit the like and subscribe, share with a friend button, even, and help us get to our goal of subscribers. All right. Let's just dive right into it. Let's go to The Bad Batch, Season 2, Episode 3. This one's called The Solitary Clone. Oh, directed by Saul Ruiz and Brad Rao, or the supervising director, and Dave Filoni and Jennifer Corbett are the writers. Of course, this is the Filoni verse, and the synopsis is well, this is especially for the SLATTMAN. Clones battle against a separatist holdout.
That is
sweet.
While being very descriptive of the episode, it is also not descriptive at all.
Yes, it's very, almost deceptively descriptive. All right, let's get into this. Well, we're gonna let's do it the old-fashioned way. What was your first impression of Episode 3?
Oh, I loved it.
No, okay.
I mean, that's my first impression. This was good. This was very good. It was nice to see. It was really nice to see Crosshair again.
Yes.
And it was really spoilers! It was also okay. It's not spoilers for Crosshair.
No, not for Crosshair,
but it was also really nice to see, insert character's name here.
Well done, sir.
Because insert character's name here was someone that was a character that we've all wanted to come back.
Battle droids.
Yeah, Roger. We can talk more about that character in when we get into McSpoilerville. But it was really fun to see battle droids again. This felt like an old school good Clone Wars episode that had like the beginning and end that just kind of tied it together with the Bad Batch, and kind of painting a picture of what's to come for Crosshair.
Yes, and the clones period, even maybe. Little hint of a spoiler there. All right, Christopher G. Moore, head on over here and tell us, what was your first impression of Episode 3?
I liked the first two episodes, and I think this is another great episode because I think we're all wondering what's happening to Crosshair, and so with this to sort of be a Crosshair specific episode, we get to see what's happening with his character and how he's, being mistreated and you're kind of wondering if there's going to be any kind of change, in his thought process of being a good soldier,
Oh, wow. That was a good voice. He did a good job.
Thank you. I've been working on all week now. I think it's great to see him back in action, because he's such a with the sniper rifle. He's such a good character with that weapon, and it had some really good action stuff. But it also had some, of course, those interesting things. How in this war where people are trying to figure out like what's happening to these Imperial forces. Are they here to help or here to hinder? You know. So yeah, and then also just the Imperial officers and their just sort of disdain for people. And so yeah, we were starting to see the Imperial Army starting to sort of, you know, extend its grasp on the universe. And so I think if anything, it makes you wonder with this season if with Crosshair, if we're going to sort of see him maybe finally turn around or something, or if he's still going to be sort of in that villain mode of thinking like he's doing what's right, but also at the same time he's also realizing that little by little he's not as important as he thinks he is. So yeah, I think this is a really great episode, and it's great to see him back. And so, and you know, I'm sure some people are like, oh, where's the rest of the Bad Batch? But I think that's always been the kind of cool thing about this series. Sometimes you can have specific, you know, like Crosshair centric episodes or episodes around certain characters because it helps with the bigger story. So yeah, so it's another great episode for me.
Character development, they like to call that, right? Yeah. So I enjoyed this quite a bit. I was a little lukewarm on the first two episodes. Not that I didn't like them, it just they didn't. I don't know. I was wanting more punch. I think that was what I was saying last week. But this one delivered on what I was really missing. Well, one, I was missing Crosshair, so I like that. Now I didn't miss the Bad Batch. That's what's funny is when I had the Bad Batch, I missed Crosshair, but when I had Crosshair, I didn't miss the Bad Batch. I don't know what that says about me. But what I really liked about this was less the mission and more about the true conflict. And the conflict is more morality, right? It's the morals behind it. And with our character who shall be named later, illustrating to Crosshair what that is. And perhaps striking a chord. It's taught with that, right? It's in there, and it's really what the base of the story is about. So that dilemma, which is not necessarily resolved, but certainly lit, right? The fuse is lit. This will come to a head, and it also brings back not only one favorite but some favorites, and maybe. For some, and maybe not for some others, and then of course sets a stage for what's happening with clones. Period, across the board. So and as we get into, let's just jump into spoilers, because one thing I found interesting is this is kind of parallel to what Andor is kind of saying about the Empire. You know, about like. How nonchalant they are about the clones is kind of how they're nonchalant about just about everything. You know, you just think they're so above it all that it doesn't matter that the character that we'll name here shortly goes AWOL, right? That it's kind of mirrors what they're saying in the Andor series. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it as well. That's just a little nugget. But SLATTMAN, why don't you go ahead? Spill the beans. Who is this character that we're talking about?
Well, it was it's Commander Cody from the Clone Wars and from Revenge of the Sith, and in theory, they say that he was in the Battle of Geonosis on Episode 2, but that's kind of like saying the guy with the really big beard in Episode 6 was Rex. 30 years after they made that movie. But you know, either way though, Cody's a beloved character, if you're not aware, and a lot of people expected him to be in Obi-Wan because of his connection with Obi-Wan Kenobi, since they worked together during the Clone Wars. But it was but now we know that could not have happened whatsoever, because Cody ditched the Empire pretty quickly.
He did, and I liked the rapport, the back and forth he had with throughout the show, especially the important scene when they confront the opposing leader.
Mm-hmm.
it's an interesting parallel of characters. I really like that.
Was that as someone who still hasn't gone through a lot of the Clone Wars show and stuff, is the tactical droid, is that a droid that showed up in the Clone Wars?
A lot.
Okay.
And shows up once or twice in Rebels as well. And don't be surprised if we see droids in the new Cal Kestis game as well.
Are they? Because they got defeated, but not necessarily all decommissioned, right? Because obviously they're here, Roger.
Yeah,
and the other droids are here as well. So
yeah, you can always turn them back on, even though they were turned off originally. That doesn't mean they can't be turned back on.
They're still useless.
Well,
they didn't shoot down the ship, though. They did. They were successful in that, I guess.
They're great comedic. They're great. I really enjoy their comedic timing.
Yes, and they're cannon fodder too. You can just kill them left and right.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing with Star Wars. You can kill these things off in so many different ways that you couldn't do with real people, and so that's why they can get away with so much violence in an animated show.
Mm-hmm.
And you can do it when it's a faceless stormtrooper, but once you reveal who the stormtrooper is, you can't, right?
I mean,
even
then with the faceless stormtroopers, they've stopped doing that with other than a blaster fired here or there,
Well, they do sort of get away with it a lot of times by not showing the actual shot. You just show like the aftermath. You show the pew going off screen and then the person falling down with smoke coming out of their body. So they can sort of get away with that, like they did in the last episode where the person fell off the stormtrooper.
How times have changed, Started off with Han shooting Greedo first, and now we can't even show a stormtrooper being shot.
Well, people's hands getting cut off too. So yeah. There's a lot more gore in the early films than they have been in later, where they cauterize the wounds and stuff like that.
Oh man! Well, the mission itself was fairly simple, but what I liked about it is that the whole mission is bookended by Crosshair going to the mess hall, and he sits down next to like this one other clone, and the clones don't like him. The clone got up and walked away, and he's always eating alone, but he doesn't get to eat much because
that's the thing. I don't know about you guys. I was thinking, no wonder he's grumpy all the time, because he never gets to eat his meal.
I know.
They're always calling him in the office. Every time he's he doesn't really get to eat. He gets like one spoonful of soup or whatever that gruel that they have, and then he goes in the office, and then it's like I was like, no wonder he needs some
malnutrition.
He needs some vitamins in his body.
He's surviving on a spoonful of sugar.
Medicine.
Yeah, I do also appreciate though that the episode is bookended by those scenes, but I even more appreciate that the mission itself is bookended by Cody and Crosshair having a conversation about, are they in the right or are they in the wrong?
Good soldier follows orders, and I think Commander Cody's not so sure anymore, is he?
Yeah.
And he goes,
I think he's pretty much not sure. I mean, he's pretty much made a decision that I think he's sure that the real forces are not.
They revealed that not only Commander Cody has gone AWOL, but they revealed that this is epidemic, right? And a lot of them are doing this.
Well, look at that mess hall. Remember when the mess halls used to be full of stormtroopers, and now there's a scattering of them. So
but they don't care. They don't see. At least the one guy that we talked to, we didn't talk to him, but the guy that showed up in the show.
And I think, but even just looking at, what's his name?
Which one?
Scopehead, but what's his name again?
Crosshair.
Scopehead. I love it.
Yeah, the name just popped out of my head. Scopehead. Yeah, Crosshair. But you could sort of see that, like, just in his physicality.
Mhm.
He's almost like dreading waking up, which, and I think he's always wanting to be on a mission, but he's not really getting out there. And so you could sort of see that, like, that maybe that he's starting to crack a little bit. And maybe he's going to start to sort of like turn around on this. And maybe what he's doing isn't like,
Yep.
if they don't, and maybe he'll start to realize, well, the only people that really cared about me was my friends of the Bad Batch. So.
And I think it took Commander Cody to light that fuse. I don't think anybody else would have. I think there was, because he knew who Commander Cody was, right? He had respect for him.
Mhm.
Well, he saved his life,
Yeah. So I definitely think that's lit the fuse and put the doubt in his head. And the body language of the animation, like you were mentioning, is just remarkable. That when he's waking up on that one shot, you can just see the doubt in his body language. He's conflicted now, and that's what I loved about this episode, is that moral dilemma is so fascinating and so well done here.
Yeah, because he was part of something before, and now he's like, everybody's kind of turning their backs on him. The other stormtroopers don't really want anything to do with him. Even the Imperial officer, doesn't really trust him leading anything. He's just pretty basically on his own. So at some point, I think, I'm wondering, with this season, maybe he'll go AWOL,
And what did he say, that he floated on that thingy for like 2 months or something, 2 or 3 months?
He said 32 cycles or something.
Rotations.
Rotations.
That'd be 1 month. 1 month. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, wow, that was, or at least something similar to a month. But yeah, so, and it was like, why'd you come back? They just take them for granted. It's just I don't know. This show was well written. I really enjoyed how this show was written. And the animation too was spot on.
Although I hope if he goes AWOL, he kills that Imperial officer. So smarmy. And
is that the same one from last week that shot the guy?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm not really. He's not. The character isn't drawn in a way that really makes him stand out.
He looks similar to the other Imperial officer that was
Right.
kidnapped. I mean, they look pretty similar.
Also, that's kind of the point of the Empire. Everyone's replaceable outside of like Grand Moff Tarkin and a few like key people in like the security ISD. I don't remember off the top of my head. There's everyone's replaceable. Everyone's the same. Like, and that's kind of what they're getting at with the clones as well. It's like they're replaceable.
More so. And then the Imperial officers are too dumb to realize it, that they're no better, that they're in the same boat. I guess that's a class system, right? I mean, we're still doing the class struggle.
Yeah.
And,
although
the clones just dropped to the bottom of the totem pole.
I will mention though that they brought up something in this episode that was brought up in the last season. So they're mentioning it because we know it's important. It's the bill or the it's not a bill, but it's like the motion to replace all of the clones with volunteers to the Imperial Army.
The actual stormtroopers, right?
Yeah, the actual stormtroopers, and they said that hasn't passed yet, but they're working on getting it passed. So, that was first mentioned in the last season. Now it's mentioned again here. So I think that's what they're leading to is, eventually that's going to get passed, and they're just going to be like, okay, we're requiring all clones to be retired now.
Yeah. And I wonder if Crosshair will switch sides before then, or if that'll be the last straw.
I think that'll be the last straw. As soon as they say you're no longer needed, we have someone better.
Yeah, he'll. I don't think he'll take that lightly.
No.
All right, well, let's go ahead and wrap this up. Let's give a score. And do we want to pick a favorite scene? Why not? Let's do it. Slatman, you're up first.
This episode's fantastic. It is fantastic in a different way that episode 1 and 2 were fantastic. Episode 1 and 2 while I was a little negative on last week, I've kind of grown to like it a lot more. As I've thought about it, as it's settled, as it's simmered, I guess is a good way to put it.
There you go.
And while the episodes 1 and 2 were fun, A-team like episodes, this one's really deep in clone story, I guess, for lack of better terms. Like it's really deep in lore, it's really deep in philosophy, it's really heavy as well, but it's also got moments of a lot of fun and a lot of really cool action scenes. But it's just it hits in such a different way than the Bad Batch missions usually do. And I can't wait to see how the funness and the deepness intersect when we inevitably get Crosshair back with the Bad Batch. But yeah, I absolutely love this episode. I'm gonna give this a 4.75. There's not much here to dislike. My major complaint is that it seemed a little rushed at times, but
you wanted more.
I wanted more. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Like going through the city, it seemed like there could have been more there, but I understand why they cut it down so much. And my favorite scene is actually the scene where Cody convinces the separatist leader to release the Imperial officer, and then the Imperial officer just turns on Cody and says, and was just like, that's what you negotiated, but that's not what I negotiated.
Yep. It was a good scene. It was like, this is going to go right. All right, Christopher G. Moore, let's have it.
Yeah, I think it's another great episode. I will say I kind of like the action scenes in the first 2 episodes better than this, but I think just having the character back that we haven't really seen in a while is definitely as we're all wondering, like, what happened, so yeah, I'll give it a 4 out of 5.
Okay.
I really enjoyed it. I think it's still enjoyable. I was actually kind of, you said it was rushed, but I was kind of, there was a couple of places I was kind of bored.
Oh no.
Yeah, for a 30-minute episode. So I was, to me, it was very simplistic. But I still enjoyed it. And so I'm kind of, it does make me kind of excited to see how his character plays out with, returning, when he, how he's going to run into the Bad Batch, the rest of the Bad Batch again, and how he's going to sort of make a decision about, like, where do I have sort of worth in what I have to give, and who's going to appreciate me, because the rest of the Bad Batch crew appreciated him. So, did we pick pick a
favorite scene? Yeah.
I'll say I always like the thing where he throws the little things on the walls. I just like that's such a cool trick, and I think that one thing where he just throws it in midair, and
and he fires at it, and
shoots that sort of tactical droid. That's such a really cool. I like that little trick he can do with just those little reflective mirrors that also reflect his laser bolts.
Yep. Yeah, it impressed Cody for sure. I like that.
Nice shot. Nice throw.
Yeah, really. I like that. I like the camaraderie. I want to see them two together again, right? I really enjoyed this. For me, it's the character part of it more than the action that really resonated with me. I'm going to give this 4.75. And I don't know. I just think this was really well written and really well illustrated, for the body language and emotion that comes out of the characters drawn on the screen. So really nicely done. My favorite scene, I'm going to go with one of those. I'm going to go with when he, at the end, when you see the doubt in his in his face and his body language. You know that he's, without him saying anything, just from the series of events and the way he's acting in that quick little scene, you know he's doubting everything. And where does that do? What does that mean? Where's that going to go? That's, to me, that's great storytelling, period. If that was in a film, it'd be remarkable, right? We'd be loving it. So well done. Well done. This is what I want. I want this kind of development on all the episodes. You know, not necessarily singled out, but I want
more of both.
Well,
for me.
Okay.
This didn't hit as hard as for me as it did for you guys. This was kind of a lower level. Because I think you have to have that balance between character and story and the fun element. So
yeah, I agree with that. All right, well, let's move on to a series I think a lot of people have been looking for a long time. There's been a lot of teases whether it was going to be a movie, a series, a movie is a series, it's a movie, and finally it landed as a series on HBOMax. And if I'm not mistaken, one of the creators behind it is kind of leading the Last of Us into development, along with the writers of, what was it, Chernobyl, which was a really well written series. But the Last of Us has made it. Before we get going, I'm going to start off tonight for a change. I just want to let you. I believe the two of you have played this game, but I have not. I have never played The Last of Us. I do not know the story. The only thing I know about it is, maybe the cover art that you see and the characters. That's the only thing I know. I didn't even know that it was, spoilers, fungus. I didn't know spores and fungus and all that. I didn't even know I didn't even know that much. So
just wait.
I only knew two characters, and so everything else is a surprise for me. So I just want to say that ahead of time, because my perspective is going, without really knowing much background, and the only background I'm getting is from like what I hear or read online about the show afterwards, after I watch it. All right, so with that, I want to start this off for the first episode. But I guess we ought to say, do we want to talk about what it is? I guess we should, right? The Last of Us. Let's give a little bit of a spiel about it. This is the first episode. It says, "When you're lost in the darkness," which we see throughout it. It's directed by Craig Mazin. It's the writers are Neil Druckmann, and I think that's the individual that's actually part of PlayStation Studios, right? And Craig Mazin, who as well. The stars, Pedro Pascal, Bella Ramsey as our leads. We also have Nico Parker in a pivotal roles as Sarah. We have let me get the right names here. Anna Torv in it. We have Sarah Hemeden. Is that right? Hemede. And then there's a cameo by John Hannah. That's a lot of fun, but we'll get to all of that. But Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey are, of course, the two leads, the ones even those who have never really played the game are probably familiar with those two characters, right? Joel and Ellie, right? Just from the even if they don't know the names.
Yeah.
All right. So let me get into my review of it. My first impression, at least. I am 100% invested in the show now. I love the Joel character. And Pedro Pascal has won me over on this story no matter what it's about. I really loved the intro with this character because there's an introduction and then we get into the 20 years later story. And then there's even a precursor to that I think might have been the scariest thing of the whole episode. Just in my head, maybe not visually, but in my head, it was like, we're screwed. It is so well done. This thing just illustrates that people suck. People are the worst. And, but at the same time, I didn't expect it to be this emotional, and character driven as well. Because we've had a lot of game properties, and many of them, there's a few successful ones, but many of them might fall flat, right? When they get adapted, especially for a series. Resident Evil, anybody? which I enjoyed, but yeah, right. But I will say, not knowing anything about this, I was not lost at all. The story fully gave me what I needed to know. I'm not, like confused about anything. But I still have a lot of stuff I'm curious about and want answers for. But I'm not confused. I'm not like, what is this show about? I know what this show's about, and I really am loving it. Slatman, what about you, sir?
This might be this might be one of the best adaptations of a video game on screen
Oh wow!
ever.
Before you get too far into this, how much of the game have you played? Because there's two of them, right? 2 games.
The all of it that matters. The first season is going to be the first game.
Right.
So
there are elements from the second game in it, though. Easter egg elements.
There are Easter eggs, but they don't really. But the actual story is not from the second game. Like, for anyone who's listening, who's played the first one but avoided the second one, just to clarify.
Why would people avoid the second one? Anyway, go ahead.
There's a lot of reasons. I avoided the second one for many reasons, but
I love the second one. But yeah,
this perfectly adapts the beginning, like, couple chapters of the game, and it was pretty surreal that it took out a lot of the gamify parts from the story and told something so well done without having exposition dump like you can have in a video game and people don't really care, like 5-minute long conversations while walking down the street, like exposition dumps. Pedro Pascal nails Joel. I'm curious how he's gonna nail Joel later on in the story, because Joel's a very complex character and he nails the very simple version of Joel very well, and we'll see how everything grows, if he can keep it up, but I'm sure he will. He's an excellent actor. Bella Ramsey is awesome as Ellie, at least what we see of her, because slight spoilers, she doesn't have a whole lot of screen time in this, all things considered, but what we do see is awesome. And this has one of the coolest looking practical effects for a monster, like tease of a monster, that I think we've seen in a while.
I like that.
I was thoroughly impressed, and this is coming from someone who was very skeptical about this coming in.
You were skeptical? Okay.
I was incredibly skeptical.
All right. Christopher G. Moore, sir, what was your first impression of The Last of Us, episode 1?
I think this is one of the best pilots for any TV series. And definitely, I agree that I think it's starting off to be one of the best adaptations of any video game. And I think they properly sort of have similar elements to the story that was told in video games. You can look on YouTube. They have side-by-side comparisons to some of the scenes, but they also do a proper adaptation of it, in different ways, that I feel don't detract for those people who are fans of the games. For instance, they changed it, sort of like the mythology around how the fungi work and stuff, because in the games it's more about the spores, and in this one it's more about
the bites,
the little getting the fungi into your body. As someone that is a screenwriter, somebody who makes films, Craig Mazin is one of the best writers out there. he does such a great job in conveying information without, you know, conveying it in some ways, you know, like because that whole thing with the TV show in 1968 that does not exist in the game. That's not from the game, but it's a great way to sort of express how this sort of thing works, and also tying in just, you know, because we're all thinking about the pandemic stuff, so there's that element of it. They also tie in stuff like global warming, you know, we're like, oh crap, we're all screwed. You know,
it hits.
Yeah, but you wouldn't think, oh, we're going to have this talk show thing at the very beginning. How is it? But I think it's so immersive because you're like, oh man, that makes sense what they're talking about. And that's kind of scary. But yeah, I think they really did a great job of making these characters, taking these characters that we sort of know from the video game, but also making them in a different way. And they take elements from the games, but they also do really great job of, you know, conveying certain out, like the scene where they're in the, I'm not giving anything away, but there's a scene in a truck that is a sort of similar to a part in the game, and but they pull it off so well. It feels like Children, that you ever seen that scene from Children of Men where it's almost like shot like one long scene. But I think for, you know, regardless of the really great acting performances, I think the economy of the screenwriting, where they don't necessarily have to say everything, but they say enough. There's even a scene where you see in this medical room where there's a poster and it talks about like how long it takes you to sort of become infected if you get some bitten areas. That's a great way to economy of script wise, to where you put something on a wall and that informs you right away, because then you know, okay, if you get bit, if you get bit in the mouth, you're going to go change pretty quickly, or if you get bit in the leg, it's going to take longer because it's got to get up to your brain. So a lot of that stuff you don't really, that's a great way of sort of explaining stuff without coming out and just, let me just tell you how this works. But just the economy of the dialogue, and there's certain scenes where it's and also visually how they say certain things. And I think it's kind of Craig Mazin. He also directed this episode, and actually this episode was actually supposed to end earlier. But the people at HBO said, no, we want to expand this out because we want to flesh out this universe so people can understand it. And I think, granted, yeah, this is like a movie. This pilot episode is like a movie, but it didn't feel like that because I was so immersed. Like, I want to see more. So now I'm like, oh crap, I have to wait. So I thought this episode was brilliant. You feel the stakes in all this. You feel the environment, this world they're in. There's a scariness to a lot of things that are happening. And yeah, they made a little changes here and there when it comes to the video game, but I think those changes are warranted, and that makes for sort of a very interesting story. And I think the thing about games nowadays, things like Last of Us, it was a cinematic game to begin with. You felt like you were playing a horror movie. And so it's kind of hard to translate that and get that same feeling. But I think they did such a great job. And even there's a little bit of changes here and there add so much more, because you get to, even like, you get to see his daughter character a little bit more in this than you got to know in the video game. And that adds so much more impact, to what happens. So yeah, I think this is a brilliant adaptation. This is how you show people, this is how you adapt something from a video game or any kind of source, to where you pay tribute to the elements that work and the story, but at the same time you adapt it in a way visually for like a series or a movie.
Yeah,
I agree.
And one thing that I want to highlight, though, that just makes the adaptation even better for me is, you mentioned that the scene at the very beginning was not in the game, but there were files in the game that you could sit and you could read on your screen that said very similar things, not word for word, but very similar things to what they're conveying in a very creative way. That's not a text dump. There's things that characters are mentioning. There's actions that are happening in the world, in the background, that you would under that would that, like I said, would be fleshed out in the game in a completely different way, whether it be a file or a cutscene or just straight up just saying it out loud to some, like during like the endless like hours of banter that Joel and Ellie have when they're on like talking to each other to film screen time when they're in the video game. They mention something, but instead let's just take that conversation out and let's show it instead. Show it actually happening. Show what they're talking about. That's brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk about Sarah Miller, Joel Miller's daughter, because and Nico Parker, who plays her. I didn't know who this character was. Like I said, the only two characters I knew were on the cover, right? But she comes across at the beginning of the show like she's the antagonist, right? Or the protagonist. She's the one that's going to be the star along with it, right? And I'm like, why did they do that? What happened to this other one? And of course, things change. As you guys have watched the show, played the game, you knew, but I didn't, and it was crushing when at the end of that chase scene when the soldier gets her. I was like, oh my god, really? No way.
It's still crushing, even when you know it's coming.
Well, yeah, and I think again, I think it's always kind of amazing when you see somebody who's a screenwriter who sort of like also does the duty of directing as well. There's some that scene in the video game. You sort of see her die, there during the video game while you're playing it. In that scene, the camera goes away and then comes back and she's gone. And so there's, just even that kind of like the way they kind of change it up. It's too late, and so just visually they kind of played, okay, it's too late. You can't save her anymore. And things like that, I think really, by the way, Craig Mazin was actually the soldier. Did he? Oh, no. He did the cameo as the soldier who shot at them. Yeah, so I think the filmmaking in this series, because actually and here's another great thing, it's like this series could have been gory as hell. There could have been so much more gore, so much more like on-screen violence, but a good amount of the violence takes place off screen throughout parts of that. And again, that also comes to the economy of it. It's like when you're going to show things, you want to make it impactful, or you see the aftermath of it, like the people dead in the hall, or the person that was killed by the fungi on the wall and stuff.
Oh my gosh.
Things that you see the aftermath, and I think that's, again, that's really great storytelling, because a lot of times I think even things like Walking Dead and other things, they kind of show too much. It's like you overshare so much. You're almost thinking, oh, audiences are stupid, they're not going to put 2 and 2 together. But this series says, okay, your audiences actually have intelligence. We're going to tell a story. We're not going to have to explain every little thing. We're going to have little bits and pieces, and you're going to figure it out as it goes. And to me, that is great storytelling. It's great filmmaking. And I think that's what works so well with this series compared to other things like, your Resident Evil adaptations and stuff. I feel like they just like audiences are idiots, and we don't really know how to adapt this story. And you can put as many Easter eggs as you want. And granted, there's a lot of Easter eggs in this if you're a fan of video games. The shirt that
Ellie's wearing, yeah.
Ellie's wearing
no, not Ellie.
Not
Sarah,
Ellie. Sarah's, yeah.
Yeah.
From the games is the same, but it has a different. It just has a different date, because they changed like the time periods from the video games. But there's little things like that are littered. Like I mentioned earlier, when she takes the movie, something in Viper video movie, that is actually referenced in the second video game, because she wants to watch it with Joel. They have those things if you're into that, but again, it is about the story. It's about the storytelling. It is about immersing you in this universe and getting to know these characters, and not having to over-explain why these characters are the way they are, or over-explaining the virus and how it works. I love that kind of jump. And we're already in the midst of it. We don't have to see people in the midst of like changing. And this is what, this is what happens with this, you know, they just throw a poster on in that one scene. And we know, okay, you know, within a certain few minutes, if you've been bitten through the head, it's going to go straight to your brain, but leg, it's going to take a lot longer, but also they do the Schindler's List type thing in one part with the kid.
Oh man, that the whole thing
putting
about,
him in red like they did in Schindler's List. And that moment, oh my gosh. And by the way, that's supposedly that the first episode was going to end when he throws that kid's body into the thing. Can you imagine the episode ended on that? And HBO was like, no, we need to
let's shove it together a little bit.
Talk about anything on the downer.
It's also just kind of amazing that poster kind of has such a huge payoff at the very end of this episode too. When Ellie is just like, this is 3 weeks old. And if you paid attention to the poster, you're like, oh shit.
All right. So we're running late on time. So let's go ahead and wrap this up with our score 1 to 5 and our favorite scene. I guess I will start off since that's the way we did it earlier. And I am going to give this a 4.5, just off the top of my head. Probably could go higher. I really am impressed by this. My favorite scene is going to be at the end with Ellie when Joel goes off on the guy, boom, 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 and the way she kind of creeps around and looks, just the whole body language, and there's no dialogue right between them, but the body language and what's happening and the visceralness of it just says so much about this character and the difference between her and Sarah, right? The daughter, right? Because he triggered it. It's all part of the story, but I was just fascinated by that, and I can't wait to see where that goes. Slatman, what about you?
I'm giving this a 5.
Nice.
I
wanted to.
Why didn't you?
I held back. I want to give a 5 later.
I think that this is as strong of an opening that you can have. I also think that this is as strong of an adaptation of a video game that you can have. This, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, this is setting the bar very high for the remaining 8 episodes.
True.
It's going to be very, very hard for the rest of the series to match how well done, how well written, how well acted, and how good the sets and everything looked. We didn't even talk about that, but the sets looked amazing.
Yeah. Action's great. The chasing.
Yeah. I'm as someone who was skeptical and was like, I expect this to be bad, I'm pleasantly blown away. And my favorite scene, and I'm going to cheat a little bit because it's not just one scene, but it's kind of like a big stretch of scenes, is from the moment that Sarah gets told that Sarah's at the watch place, the watch repair place, and the lady's like, you need to leave, to the moment that she dies. Like that whole
That's like 30 minutes. But it's great though. Yeah.
I know, but it's so hard to pick because that whole like that I felt like that section was more like 20 minutes or like 15. It didn't feel very long. But I don't know, like I'm cheating a little. I did say I'm cheating a little. That whole section was just so perfectly executed. It was so well paced, so well done, so well acted, and it gave you just enough hints of everything to come.
It's the highlight of the show for certain. All right, Christopher G. Moore, we got about a minute left. What's your score and your favorite scene?
5 out of 5.
5 out of 5.
It's perfection. I'm sorry, this is perfection. I think for this to be the first episode, and granted, maybe the rest of the episodes may let me down, but I don't know. This makes me very hopeful of how the rest of the series is going to turn out. As for favorite scene, I will say I don't know. This is probably part of Chris's, but Slatman's when that plane falls
Oh
out
my
of the
god,
sky,
that was so good.
I was thinking, I'm not sure what I would do there. I'd probably just crap my pants.
I think they may have actually.
But yeah, just that because actually, if you go back and look, you see the lights off in the distance in that scene, and then it just comes closer, and it's like, oh crap. So yeah, I just that was pretty amazing. But yeah, I'll say that's my favorite segment of the episode. Although there's a lot of segments, I could say, just dialogue sequences.
There is, and Ellie is a badass. And we didn't talk about Tess Anator, but she's great in it too.
Oh, they're all great. Yeah,
it's a great cast, great show. We'll be talking about it for weeks, at least the next 8. So join us for all that. We have to dart. Christopher Slatman, thank you for joining me. This was so much fun.
No problem. Can't wait to see what happens next.
Good.
Click, 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 click.
All right, thank you. Let's get out of here. Let's say good night.
All right, good night.
Good night.